Selling your dental practice is one of the biggest decisions you will make in your dental career. This is Paul Dr. Nacho, founder of Dental Nachos and Dentist Job Connect. I am so proud to have transitions experts from DDS Match, proud key resource and sponsor of the group, to share with you how not to mess up the biggest decisions of your dental career. As you're listening, text BUY to 215-543-6454 to learn more about buying a practice. Text SELL to 215-543-6454 if you are ready to start planning the process of selling your practice. And for both buyers and sellers, I hope I inspire you to start the process early. I am thrilled to welcome to our episode today two amazing brokers. I'm going to let you introduce yourself to the audience. Justin and Jessica.
Justin Baumann, how are you? DDS Match, that would be New York and Western PA.
And I'm
Awesome.
Jessica. Nice to meet you.
Awesome, guys. And I cannot let it pass. Congratulations on adding a permanent roommate to your house. Okay, that's what I call my children, permanent roommates. So, you know, it's a loving term for them, but great job. I love all the stories you're sharing. Really soak up that first year of parenthood. Everybody loves you during that year. So anything.
Every day it's a new adventure. So there you go.
Yeah.
I've made many videos and comparisons to owning a dental practice. It's like someone just giving you a baby and saying, here, you figure out how to deal with it. But let me just share with you, the baby and child, that's 18 years. The practice could be 30 years. So I think that's a great comparison. Well, we're doing some amazing episodes with your colleagues. You guys are amazing resources in what I will call a nacho nuts world of dental practice transitions. You guys stand out with your reputation, educating people out there, but just give us a minute or two of your daily dental life in helping dentists survive, thrive, and not cry.
Yeah, I think just like anything else, we're here to really formally educate dentists, and that's both buyers and sellers, on what a transition looks like and what it should look like. I say that because, again, there's a lot of brokers out there that don't necessarily hold up to the standards in which we like to put out there in the market. And we do things quite a bit differently. And that means both through social media and just like I said, through the sheer amount of education that we try to pump out there.
Yeah,
and I think
go ahead, Jess.
No, you're okay. I think when we represent dentists as well, we really take the time to, hold their hand step by step throughout the process. And I think that's different from a lot of brokers. We don't just find them a buyer. It doesn't just stop there at the end of the day. We take them through the beginning to the entire end of the transition, really providing a lot of one-on-one guidance.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I think it's great. And one of the themes throughout this has been how, you need a good team to make the dream work. I've shared, I failed making it to the NBA, but I was successful in naming myself after an appetizer. So pretty much the same thing. But let's get, a bad team will make you scream. That rhymes well too. So in your daily world of working with sellers and buyers, how important are the other players on the team? And give us a few people, if a buyer's listening or seller's listening, saying like, who do I need to have on my team in addition to a transitions broker? Who would be on that team?
Yeah, kind of. So again, in today's conversations we've had throughout this entire day, quite simply, it comes down to, we as in DDS Match only represents the seller. But again, we have a lot of conversations with buyers. So it's very important that both the seller and buyer, both talk with their CPAs. They both have to talk with their attorneys. Now, again, I say this, but I also want to add these little points in front. It's called dental specific for each of those. Yeah. Because again, there's nothing worse than us getting into a transition. Come to find out, he's my uncle and he's a divorce attorney and he's going to do great. That's going to take care of that.
I'm going to give you guys something to help you, because I want to help all my DDS Match broker friends talk dentist and just say, how good would an oral surgeon be at doing your crown prep, general dentist? And they will know exactly what that means.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't mean they don't know how to be an attorney. It just means they are not doing this type of attorneying. I know you're an attorney, Jessica, so I don't know if that's, but they're not doing this daily. And I mean, I've given advice to people through my podcast and, working with the people like Rob Montgomery to use people who do this thing every day. Use people who do this thing every day. So I think that's such a key point. So we have the dental focused attorney, dental specific attorney, dental specific accountant, anyone else that they should be thinking about connecting with.
Yeah, I think you're the buyer, the commercial lender that they use. We have had transactions that are financed through just banks that do even just general business financing, but they're not dental specific financing. And, when there's a lot of nuances in dentistry and a lot of deal terms that are specific to the dental industry and the dental transition. And so it's important not just to use any bank, even just a bank that does regular business lending, really to use a commercial lender for the buyer that does, dental specific transactions day in and day out. And, I know that's important for the buyer, but people don't realize how important that actually is for the seller too. Because what happens is, if the buyer picks the wrong commercial lender, the seller can end up in deals that just get delayed time and time again, things that are slowing the deal down that really don't need to be doing that. And it's because, the banks just don't understand the dental specifics of the industry and the terms and how the deals are structured. And so it's almost just important for the seller that the buyer picks the right lender as it is for the buyer.
That is such amazing value, because as someone who's done this, I've seen very difficult, sometimes flat out heartbreaking stories of a seller not being able to move with their family to a new state. That's happened because we've been talking about, and we're going to talk more with you guys about, DSO or private practice sale. It doesn't say versus, but what you're saying there, Jessica, when they're talking about that bank, they're talking about a private practice sale, because DSOs, as far as I know, they have a giant pile of Scrooge McDuck money, and they can just take whatever they want and give it to the seller. And even though that probably sounds a little outlandish, it's not totally untrue, because the DSOs don't have to necessarily ask anyone else for money that the sellers know about, so to speak. But in the private practice sale, that delay, and you can scare those sellers by saying, hey, if they're not working with the right bank, you're going to have to practice longer than you want to. And that is likely one of the scariest things you can say to a seller, because you guys are dealing with people all the time. Would you agree that many sellers don't start the process early enough, and then by the time they connect with a broker, they want to be done in a timeline that might be sooner than reasonable, Justin?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, again, I'd like to see my new sellers reach out to me and have a 3 to 5 year window in which they have decided, or at least started thinking about a strategy to actually transition. I'd have to say that's few and far between of those that have actually thought ahead on this. Usually they'll give me a call literally about 6 months before they are ready to hang up their handpiece. And they're like, hey, listen, Justin, I got this amount of time in me. And to be honest with you, I've been declining revenue the last 3 years, and that's going to really make my job a whole lot more difficult. So again, I asked for that 3 to 5 years so we can come up with a strategy, so we can go out with even an even keel on that revenue stream, or even an increasing revenue. That's going to make my job a whole lot easier, and it's also going to help their retirement funds, which should come from that sale.
Yeah, I think that's so key. Maybe either of you guys, I just thought of this question. We're kind of going on this theme of start early, meet people that can help you before you need them to help you. One of the things, the other talking dentist tip I can give you is, you could say to a dentist, like, do you ever get frustrated that patients call around the holidays and say they need work done, but they had the whole year to get it done? And they go, aren't I your best patient? I'm like, no, you're not even close to my best patient. You don't even come for recall exams. Like, how do you feel about that patient? They go, I feel annoyed and frustrated. Well, don't be that client for the bank. Don't be that client for your attorney. Don't be that client for your accountant. Too often, dentists, because they live in their Game of Thrones king and queen's castles, they go, oh, my attorney just must want to do it tomorrow for my LOI. I go, no, they have other clients just like you have other patients. And I think what you've shared is so key. Connecting early with people, you develop a better relationship with them.
Absolutely. And I want to encourage, honestly, sellers to reach out to their CPAs. I've heard horror stories where, you get very far into a transition, and finally the CPA pipes up and said, listen, doctor, you really can't retire right now. Financially, you're just not set to do this. So
it is a way. Now, I will share, if you made me, I don't want to brag in this moment, but I'll do it. I didn't make it to the NBA, not close. Okay. But there is nobody who connects with more dentists on planet Earth in this moment than I do, right? I have 70,000 people following me on social media. I have practices with dentists. I talk to dentists all the time. And that's why I share with you is that dentists think that they can control the world outside their office the way they do inside the office. And it causes them a lot of pain, dental pun intended. And they say things like, why does the buyer want to buy the real estate right now? I would want to buy the real estate right now. I'm like, I don't know, people are way different in 2024. So do you guys see, I don't want to be as cliche as generational differences, but maybe different expectations with buyers and sellers?
Yeah. So I think I think especially with sellers, I think the hard part when they wait, like Justin said, 6 months to want to retire.
Yeah.
The hard part is like our, kind of motto at DDS matches. You want to transition on your own terms and preserve your legacy and also ensure continuity between you and the buyer, you and your patients, you and your
Yeah.
staff. And and the buyers want that at the end of the day. I truly believe that buyers walk in, they want to buy a great practice. They want to give the seller, what they need to transition on their terms. They want it to be a good, smooth, enjoyable transition process. And sometimes what happens is when the sellers, don't come to you until they have to, basically leave the practice within 6 months, you can't necessarily give that to the seller at the end of the day. You just don't have time. You don't have time to make sure everything they're going to need, clinically, their records are in line, financially, their records are in line, that they have time to work with the buyer to transition, whether it's 3 weeks, 3 months, maybe even 3 years when we're talking about DSOs at the end of the day, to make sure that their staff are taken care of. They're going to a buyer who's going to, maintain the same compensation or better compensation packages, that their patients are with somebody that has the same culture, values at the end of the day. And so when the seller waits until that 6 month period, we can't satisfy any of those things that are really important to us. And the reason why, we do what we do at the end of the day for sellers. And we find that to be just a really unfortunate situation for a seller who has built a practice over, like you're saying, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, sometimes 40 years, at the end of the day. And, you can't make it this ideal transition that both the seller and the buyer, wants at the end of the day. You can't wait for the right match and compatibility for all of those things to occur.
And kind of like what you just mentioned, as far as, things have changed. So again, the fact that they've done 30 years in that office with the Pelton and Crane executive unit and the shade that's down below, it's not exactly what the young buyers are looking for today. And if you're going to wait 6 months to then try to update your practice, it's not financially, fit to do that. So what you want to do is, do a little bit of updates and keep doing that throughout that 3 to 5 year window that you're doing it. You can reap the benefits of it. And then obviously it's going to make it a lot nicer for that buyer to come in and be like, listen, I don't have to put a lot into this. This thing's kind of good to
They
go.
need to do a thing, like do a practice glow up before you have to sell, right? They need that because it's, I'll tell a quick story. When I was 8 years old, we were selling our house and my mom was like redoing the wallpaper and they were doing some stuff outside. I was like, why are we doing this? We're going to sell it. And she's like, well, we want people to think it's nicer than it actually is. And I mean, it was just a harmless way, but I've made in my little 8-year-old brain, I say, oh, wow, we do need to make this more attractive for someone to buy it. And practice owners should do the exact same thing with their practice. They don't need to put a pool in their backyard, whatever that means, right? They don't need to build 2 more operatories, but they do need to do things to make it the practice that they would have wanted when they were 32 years old. And I often find that these 2 worlds can be wide apart. And I don't know, but maybe this is too easy of a question, but is it your job to make them understand these things during these sequential conversations, or how do you make them understand those, Jessica?
Yeah, that's entirely our job. That's why we want, when you come to us 3 to 5 years out, we start with a phone call. And we start with talking about what are your goals in this transition at the end of the day, right? What are the terms you want to transition on? Who's your ideal buyer at the end of the day? And so then from there, it's okay, if this is what your ideal transition is, then we start looking at the practice, everything from what it's worth, right? To how do we connect you with the right buyer? And that could be things like you're still on paper charts. Maybe we have electronic PMS system because that's what a buyer is going to want. Maybe you don't have digital x-rays yet and you are going to have to transition into something of that nature. So the longer it is that you come to us, the more we can analyze, this is your ideal transition at the end of the day. And here are all the things we can do in the middle to get you there, to make sure that you end up with the right buyer and the best transition process that you can, enjoy at the end of the day and feel like you transitioned your legacy the way that you envisioned it when you came to us 3 to 5 years before.
Let's just be honest.
Oh, go ahead. Keep going, Justin.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, let's just be honest about it too. Again, I love my abilities and everything else that are related to it as far as being really good at a broker. But the point is it sometimes takes quite a bit of time to sell a practice. And it doesn't mean that I'm gonna turn it over overnight. And especially in a rural environment, again, it's all gonna be about the right person at the right time. So again, if somebody comes, comes up to me and says, listen, I got 6 months to get this sold, it puts a lot of pressure on us and it makes it unfair to the process in general, because again, I can't hunt and find the best possible
And
buyer.
I mean, you're adding, so I mean, the best buyer might not have a license in that state yet. That could happen, right?
Absolutely.
The best buyer, I mean, we should have multiple, we got multiple steps, and the best buyer might not be credentialed with those insurances that you take, and you're a PPO practice. And there's a lot of hurdles built into dentistry because it's like from the Oregon Trail days, right? Our state licensure thing is from the 1800s. I mean, the whole credentialing thing with insurance, but these are things that cause holdups. And, I see this, in talking to all these dentists, the fear factors of the buyers are just totally different than the seller. And that's why they're not on the same page, right? The seller's like, come on, it's going to be great. I practice here for 30 years. It's going to be fine. I got a great practice. I got to move to Florida. And then the buyer's like, will the patient stay? Can I even be a practice owner? Will the team stay? So the more that you can have runway to prepare for that, the better. One of the themes I want to ask you about, because you get asked about it, is just some general advice or awareness of the private practice or DSO sale, not versus. And I'll be the seller. Dr. Guac, great name for a dentist. I do $1.8 million a year. I have a part-time associate. I have 5 operatories. I'm 60 years old. And my wife says, you should think about selling your practice. So I'm actually doing the right thing with both of you. I'm 3 years ahead, right? I'll be willing to practice till I'm 65. If I just said, hey, my friends at the study club told me DSOs pay 27x EBITDA, but I don't know what EBITDA is, or these young dentists, they can't get a loan because they have too much debt. Share some awareness with me as that type of seller.
Yeah, again, on paper, what you just stated as far as that particular hypothetical dentist is actually, it is a great or a great target for a DSO. To be honest with you, they're exactly the type of practice they're looking for. You mentioned a 1.8 in revenue, 5 ops, 3 to 5 years roughly of still wanting to practice, and multiple dentists. Exactly. So they're all things that are very attracted to a DSO. Now, again, there's going to be a lot of nuances, a lot of talk that we have to go through to make sure that that's something they really want to, go towards. Now, even though a lot of DSOs out there will say, listen, I'm going to come in here. We're going to take over a lot of these different things. We're going to call them, different synergies, for instance. But at the same token, things aren't going to change. And let's just be honest with you, things are going to change in some way, shape, or form. Things are going to change. So a person who's really set in their ways, they could be bumping heads for the next 3 to 5 years at 30% of collections now, or 25% depending upon which DSO they decide to go with. So that being said, again, I'm a big fan of the dual approach. Hey, listen, doctor, again, what about maybe even finding a private buyer? I know, at the 1.8 range, let's just throw some random number up there of 80% of collections is roughly what a private buyer would pay for that. You can then kind of set your schedule. You can come in 1 or 2 days a week. You can only do the crown and bridge, or maybe you want to do implants, the things that you want to do. And then you can exit stage left out, have to worry about any kind of business whatsoever. So there are different ways to look at each deal. And again, we have to weigh that with each potential seller to see if it really does fit with what they want to do going forward.
I great value both shared. I want you to go to second, Jesse, but I just still want to keep reinforcing this. If you don't want to work for the next 3 years, it makes it very difficult to sell to a DSO. And in many people, if they heard just that will point them down one road, because it's not about the money. It's not about the EBITDA. It's about how soon can they be done practicing both ways, right? I get 50-year-old dentists saying, I want to practice for the next 15 years. That could be too early for a DSO sale. Could be. I'm not saying it always is. So there's so much value to be shared here in this more awareness in their biggest decision in their career. And that's why they need people like you, because when XYZ DSO just gets a hold of some of these dentists, they don't have people to protect them. I know you want to say something, Jessica, so feel free to add to that conversation.
Yeah, I also think it's easy, big picture, pie in the sky, to assume a DSO is going to pay top dollar for the practice. And that may be true on paper. But I also think sometimes what dentists don't realize, and a big difference between a private buyer versus a DSO is a lot of time the way that the DSOs might structure the terms of those deals.
Yeah.
So it may be, let's say they, agree that, they're going to buy your practice for 2 million. But how is that 2 million structured?
Yes.
Typically, DSOs aren't paying 100% up, cash up front. Typically, they're paying maybe 60 to 80% of that purchase price up front. And what a lot of dentists don't realize is that the remainder of the purchase price is tied up in things called like earnouts or holdbacks. So it could be one, you've got to remain there for a period of time, just time, before you're going to get a certain amount paid out to you. So it may be you get 20,000 year one, 40,000 year two, 60,000 year three. And it's, basically done to hold you into that position at the practice for that 3 to 5 years. Then there's earnouts, which are not just, you don't just even remain there. You have to remain there plus continue to keep, revenues of the practice at least the same, but usually grow them year after year after year, sometimes, 20% year after year. So it may be that they are paying more on paper for the purchase price than a private buyer, but at the end of the day, are you going to walk away with that amount of money? A lot of the times, the sellers don't actually, because they don't, like Justin was saying, they think nothing's going to change. They think they're still going to be fully in control. And then when they realize they're not, they want to be able to walk away. Well, those types of things like earnouts or holdbacks, right, are tied to you staying. So if you walk early, you lose that amount. So you could actually end up with less than.
Your people should re-listen to that, because I've seen sad stories on either end and successful stories on either end. And usually it was in their planning phase and their awareness phase. And most of the time it's a two-way street of why they go well or they don't go well. It's not just one person getting ripped off and another person, being able to do implants every day. It's really, it's a partnership that you have to be very eyes wide open about going into. I think what you should say is, you say this, maybe they'll laugh, maybe not. You say, remember we got report cards as kids, right? And there was like plays nicely with others. How did you do on that? And if they did not do well, don't sell to a DSO, right? Because I know there are dentists that if you move their curing light 1 inch, they would just freak out, whether it was me as the private practice. I'm not a DSO, but I've purchased practices and kept the dentist on. And it's a wild dynamic when they've been practicing by themselves for 30 years. And now they're practicing with me. And there's a lot of energy around that when you have somebody else telling you what to do. And I'm sure you guys can share and people can reach out to you. There's great stories with this and not so great ones. And I think we should just be talking more about both instead of versus, both instead of versus.
When it comes to DSO sale, people really do need to have somebody on their side. I mean, there are so many nuances in those contracts that, again, if you don't know what you can ask for and where to ask for it, you're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot long term. So
yeah, I totally agree. You guys have shared amazing values. Is there anything else? You guys are in upstate Western New York and Western Pennsylvania. Justin and Jessica, an awesome duo here from DDS Match, our key resources and sponsors. Anything else you'd like to leave our audience with before we wrap up?
Sure. I think one great thing also about working, with DDS Match is that, we have, I think, 49 brokers now in 49 different states. And even though we each own the territory, that we work in, right? So we really work hard as individual owners of our own businesses. DDS Match is very unique in that, for example, every Monday we have a team phone call where everybody who owns geographic territory is on it. And we have a lot of ability to share different experiences, different information, brainstorm about how we're dealing with different scenarios that one, broker may be dealing with in one state and what everybody else has, done as a solution. So you not only end up with who, if it's Justin or I, if you're selling a practice in New York, you not only end up with us representing you, but you end up with this huge base of knowledge. People who have worked in this industry for a really long time, the collective minds and the information that will be available to you if you're looking, to sell your practice and we're representing you as a seller, or even the buyers if we're just guiding you, educating you. I think that's really unique about DDS Match is just the sheer depth of knowledge that we have to offer both our clients who are the sellers, but also the buyers and the circle of influence that we keep around us.
I love it. Hire the right team so your spouse does not scream at you and say, I thought you were going to be retiring next year. You say, oh, so it's such a key point. And I think, having people that have your back in treatment planning, the biggest decision of your dental career is so important. So thrilled to have you guys sharing with me. If people would like to connect with Justin and Jessica, just text by to 215-543-6454. Text cell to 215-543-6454 or reach out to us at dentalnachos.com. Thank you both so much for sharing with me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you again, Dr. Gooden.